Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the webinar on Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions Postdoctoral Fellowship 2023. And this is an overview webinar, so it's part of a 3 webinar series that we are running. So we begin with the overview, we go on to the proposal writing on the 31st of May, and then we will also have a matchmaking masterclass on 5th and 6th of June. The presentations and the webinars are brought to you by EURAXESS Australia and New Zealand. And it's great to see interest from so many of you joining us from different parts of the globe. And today we actually have a lot of researchers joining from Australia and New Zealand, as well as 31 other countries across the globe, which is really nice to see. First of all, please allow me to introduce to you our esteemed guest speaker for today, Dr. Isabel de la Casa Lindberg. Dr. Lindberg is the Swedish national contact point for Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions. We must thank her a lot because she's joining so early from Stockholm. Welcome, Dr. Lindberg. And I'm Nishant Sandilia, Regional Coordinator for Australia and New Zealand at EURAXESS Worldwide. I have noticed a few names in the registration list who have joined us in other webinars as well. And for those who have joined our webinar for the first time, EURAXESS is an initiative of the European Commission that addresses barriers to the mobility of researchers and seeks to enhance scientific collaboration between Europe and the rest of the world. So when we say we provide a lot of research-related news, career opportunities, international collaboration, and networking possibilities, it's to enhance scientific collaboration, of course. Since all of you are watching this on your laptop or your phone, I'll encourage you to type EURAXESS Australia and New Zealand on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube and follow us there. I'd also encourage all of you to please use the question and answer function and not the chat function in the interface to ask any question that you might have while Isabel is presenting. We will come back to take your presentations, to take your questions after her presentation. Now, please note that we will provide you the recording and the slide of the session. However, the recording will not include the Q&A, and hence I'll recommend you to stay for the entire duration if you want to hear responses for the common queries that the applicants have. Now, before we begin, we have a few poll questions for you, and to understand if it actually makes a lot of sense. In a few moments from now, you will see the poll questions appearing on your screen. Do let me know. So the first question is a very generic question to understand your level of understanding. How much do you know about the Marie Sklodowska-Curie Postdoctoral Fellowship? The first option is not at all. Second one is somewhat, and third option is very well, where you actually consider you have fair enough understanding of the program itself. I can see almost every one of you have responded. So I'll end the poll and I'll share the results so you can see the results. We see that almost 44% said not at all, and 53% said somewhat. So quite a mix of beginning understanding, right? So it's fine. Now we have another poll which will appear again on your screen. And this is with regards to an indication of how you feel the numbers are. So how many projects are expected to be funded through the MSCA Postdoctoral Fellowship 2023 call? There are 4 options: up to 500 projects, less than 1,000, less than 1,500, or less than 2,000. I'll give you 5 more seconds before I close the poll, because I can see a few of you have still not responded. I'm not able to know who is answering it rightly or wrongly, so please express your polls. Okay, so I'll end the poll now, and you can see the results. So the results indicate that 46% of you think that it's less than 500, 37% think is between 500 to 1,000, 13% of you think it's 1,000 to 1,500, and 5% are on the higher end. And the correct answer is the third option. So it's in the bracket of 1,000 to 1,500. Approximately 1,200 postdoctoral fellows will be funded, but of course, this number will be slightly up or less in a few numbers, but in general, it would remain in the bracket of 1,000 to 1,500. Now, I think we have had enough appetite in terms of how these work. Now, let me pass the presenter privilege to Isabel, who is going to enlighten us with all the details that needs to be understood with regards to the postdoctoral fellowship. Over to you, Isabel.
Thank you, Nishant, and good morning, everyone. At me, it's morning. For you, it's good night, I understand it. So some of you at least, so depending on where you are in the world. So let me just start my slides here, see if everyone can see it properly. Nishant, you can see it, so should be okay?
Yes, yes.
Great. So Marie Sklodowska-Curie action, some of you already knew about it, which is good to hear to some extent. So that's very good. And some of you are like brand new to it. So, but this is also good. We will try to cover everything here today. Just to introduce you a little bit to the program. So this is one of the programs in the European Research Innovation Framework programs that have been actually launched in 1996. So it's been ongoing for quite a while now, this one. So it kind of stays in the framework program throughout the programs. The framework programs normally runs like 6 years at a time, and there are work programs that are published every second year, so that you need to keep track of those ones. But it's a very popular program actually, and statistics tells us that 12 Nobel laureates actually have, in one way or another, during their career, being funded from one of the MSCA schemes here. So it's sort of like the starting point, one could say, for going further in the excellence career era, and maybe end up in winning a Nobel Prize at the end. Who knows? So under Horizon Europe, which is the framework program that was launched 21 and going to run until 27, approximately 6.6 billion euros is going to be enrolled in this one. And estimation of 65,000 researchers will be funded through this program. And what they want with Horizon Europe, they changed a little bit from framework program to framework program. But during Horizon Europe, the focus will be on strengthening organizations by supporting excellent doctoral and postdoctoral programs, but also the collaborative projects worldwide and promoting a structural impact on the organization. So it's really like focused also on the organization. So that might be interesting for some of you that are here because you represent an organization. But it also foster research and innovation beyond academia. So like to boost ties between academia and the other non-academic organizations. MSCA wants researchers to be exposed also to the non-academic sector for building a prosperous career, so to say. So actually the mobility between different sectors is highly encouraged. And also to build international links, to attract talent to Europe and building the international strategic partnership, etc. So that is, you can have a look in the link there to see the whole brochure there. It's run by the Publications Office of the EU, so you can have a look if you want. So I mentioned the European Framework Program. This is the scheme of it. It's the main core of the program, and this is a political instrument in order for Europe to achieve the political goals in terms of research innovation. So the three pillars are, you could say, the core, one of the cores of the program. And pillar one is based totally on excellent science, it's bottom-up principle. And you find Marie Sklodowska-Curie action in there together with European Research Council. Some of you might have heard about that one too. It's a totally bottom-up program supporting excellent researchers, but also research infrastructures, the European research infrastructures. But you also have pillar two, which is more, we say, top-down calls. You have a lot of calls that focus on a specific question that needs to be answered, and you apply for different types of funding schemes in there. And of course, there are some synergies there because overall EU wants to solve these burning questions in the world, of course, like everyone, all nations want to do. Pillar 3 is the Innovative Europe, and there you find the European Innovation Council, for instance, where it's more focused towards company, but also in collaboration with academia. There are a lot of synergies here. MSCA actually have synergies towards EURAXESS. So if some of you are in the fission fusion area of research, you might want to have a specific, I'm not going to go into this today, but when you read the work program, you can see that there are openings towards a EURAXESS fellowship. So you can have a look at that specifically. There's also synergies towards the widening participation and strengthening the European research area, especially the widening participation. There's also openings towards like ERA fellows, it's called. So you can have a look at that if you're interested in going into that part of the European research area. So going more than into the actions as an overview here. So there are 5 main actions in MSCA. The doctoral network is coming first actually in the work program. It's a very popular program, building networks for doctoral students to solve a joint research question, etc., and building international partnership, etc. We're going to focus today on the postdoctoral fellowship, which is support researchers. So these are like talented researchers with experience that they want to fund and foster in excellence in research innovation here. You need to have a PhD in order to be enrolled here. But there are also some might be interesting for you, staff exchanges. This could be more on organizational level. One can apply for funding, be part of this staff exchanges program, where all kinds of staff involved in research innovation can be seconded to learn a new method or a new principle or it could be anything. It could actually be administrative staff and technical staff also, as long as they are enrolled in research innovation. You have the MSCA and Citizen, which is an outreach program. European Researchers' Night is to talk to the public about research and research and innovation. But you also have the co-fund, which is a larger scale network program. You already need to have regional, national, and international programs, but then you can apply for extra co-fund financing from MSCA in order to take it to the next level. So that one is also partly open for you to participate as an associate partner. But that's, I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm just mentioning it. But if you're interested in reading more about this, you can look into this guide for multipliers that I add a link there. It's a good read to get a good introduction to MSCA. So the agenda today, I was thinking we talk about the underlying principle of MSCA, which are really important, depending on, it doesn't matter which of these actions you want to go for, the underlying principle is important. And then we go into to do an overview of the MSCA program and call. So MSCA is open for instance, Australia, New Zealand researchers to go to Europe on a European fellowship. And this is where you're incoming to Europe, and you can also be seconded. You can have an option to be seconded also. So you can go to Europe, have your base there, be employed there, but then go and do a secondment anywhere in the world. There's also opening to do a non-academic placement. That is something that you can do additionally, but it has to be in a non-academic sector, not in academia. So there's also something called MSCA Global Fellowship. That would be something that someone placed in Europe actually go to Australia, New Zealand on a global fellowship. But then there is a mandatory return phase to come back to a member state or Horizon Europe associated country, to Europe, the country in Europe. So there's a mandatory return phase, but you can also do secondments and non-academic placement. So as you can see here, there's no like easy overview of the general routes of the fellowships, because it really varies with what you apply for. Since the secondments and non-academic placements are optional, but the only thing that is static is that you have to leave. On a global fellowship, you leave Europe to another country in the world that is not Europe. And in the European fellowship, you come to Europe. But it can be, then you have more complicated ways how you want to scheme your own proposal when you write it. So going into the underlying principles here. First, what is important to understand is that the MSCA is a reference program for doctoral education and postdoctoral training, as I said before. And what they're looking for here is talent. It's like experienced researcher. And in order to be competitive, it's more like you're probably the most talented one in your specific field that applies that specific year, you know. So it's like really, they're looking for talents here. And it's a support to excellent researcher, but also to foster excellence in research innovation collaborations, to also have a knowledge transfer, to support knowledge transfer on methodologies and content and training, supervision, and career guidance. So it's more than just the proposal that you have set up, like your specific research. You have to prove that the training is also excellent by the MSCA support, like supervision, career guidance, etc. There's also a support on mobility of researchers. It's a strong focus on mobility between countries, as I mentioned, but also between sectors and between disciplines, all to acquire new knowledge, skills, and competences. The program is, as I think I mentioned before, is totally bottom-up, and it's open to all domains of research innovation, and it encourages international cooperation to set up strategic collaborations. There are 2 documents that is like a must-read already at this point if you're already thinking about going for an MSCA Postdoctoral Fellowship. That is it's an old charter, an old principle called European Charter for Researchers and Code of Conduct for the Recruitment of Researchers. For MSCA, it's really important to hold career, that it should be like a very solid, good career for the postdoctoral fellowship. So that one gives you the basic run of it. So have a look at this one and go through it and read it and understand it. So the same goes for the supervisor, those of you that are planning to be a supervisor of an MSCA fellow. So have a look at that one and read it. There's also another guideline that is specific for MSCA. That is the effective supervision and career guidance. This is to promote the supervision and effective supervision and adequate mentoring and career guidance. There's a strong focus on the supervisor too. So not only the fellow will be evaluated, also the supervisor and the hosting institution. So that is part of the evaluation of an MSCA Postdoctoral Fellowship. There's also focus, that, like it is probably in all research funding in the world now, on open science and responsible research innovation. So the EU has set up an own platform for this, Open Research Europe it's called. You don't have to use this one. You need to have your research to describe how your research is going to be distributed open science. You can use this one. It's free to use. It's fast, but you don't have to use it. You can also use other ones, other platforms. But I just want to mention it here so that you know that it exists. There's also focus on the responsible research innovation, the RRI principles. They are not like new, but in the strategic plan for 2020 to 24, you can have a look how they changed it for this framework program, because now the RRI principles are horizontally integrated. So have a look also into that link so that you understand more about the political agenda here and what is important for the Commission in terms of research innovation. European Green Deal, that is something that is part of the whole framework program. It's very important for the European Commission, of course, and it's to support bottom-up and frontier applied research on Green Deal tackling climate and environmental related challenges. MSCA has developed its own green charter based on the European Green Deal and provides recommendations in regard to MSCA specifically. So I would encourage you we're going to talk a little bit more about that one later, but I would encourage you also, that is like one of the underlying principles, to have a look at that charter, the MSCA Green Charter, and read it. I mentioned some synergies. One thing that would be good to have a look at is the Next Generation EU, as you see in the link down there, because this is a easy recovery instrument on green, digital, healthy, strong, and equal Europe. There's quite a lot of funding involved in that instrument. And the whole goal is to strengthening economic, social, and territorial cohesion and correct imbalances between countries and regions, for instance, on green and digital transition, etc. So this is also something, depending on your proposal, like your area of research or your field, it's good to have a look at these ones so that you understand the whole, like the bigger context. That is really important when you want to go for an MSCA and be successful, since these are like highly competitive grants. It's good to know the political agenda and how your proposal might fit into all this. And so that is the underlying principle that I would recommend you to have a look at. So apart from all this, yeah, as I mentioned now, of course, the work program is important to read. Like before you even know if you want to submit something this year or next year, whatever, have a look at the work program here. The link there, it actually contains everything that you need to know. So there are, it gives you recommendations to what more to have a look at them. The call is open, so I have put in the link down there for the call. It also gives you more detail about the year 23 call with all the details here. I must mention that there are 8 scientific panels. It's a bottom-up and open to all domains. So you pick the scientific panel of your choice, the one that you think fits best to your proposal here. There's also another guide that is very important to read, the guide for applicants. Normally these are launched together with the call, and it has been launched this year too. So you can see this, the updated one that I put in here. That gives you a good overview of, the musts before going for a call, a PF call. So it gives you like eligibility criteria, et cetera, and how to work on this one, on your proposal. So, and I have to say, like, how important it is to have an early contact with the grants office at this point. When you have read all this and when you have found your hosts, if you already found it or when you're thinking of finding a host, etc., as soon as you find one, contact the grants office at an early point. So there are, since 2022, a resubmission restriction. So if you score less than 70% out of 100, then, of course, you cannot submit following year. That is a restriction. So you want to have a really good application so that you actually can be competitive. And even if you don't get the grant, they are very competitive that you can submit the next year. Most people actually, very few of them get the funding the first year. And normally it takes like one round of working on your proposal to get these ones. There's also focus on gender in Horizon Europe. So you need to submit in the point where you then will go to grant agreement, a gender equality plan. It's an eligibility criterion under the whole Horizon Europe, the whole framework program. So I put in the link there so you can have a look at that one. When it comes to Sklodowska-Curie, they're talking about the integration of gender dimension into research and innovation. So it's not about how many men and women, etc., you have listed or you're going to fund or whatever it is. So it's more related, it's only related to the gender dimension to research and innovation. And under MSCA, it is an award criterion that will be evaluated under excellence criterion. So the evaluators will have a look at your scientific proposal here and look how well you have evaluated this under the excellence criterion. It's not new to MSCA, but it has been more, emphasized in Horizon Europe. I mentioned also the MSCA Green Charter. That is also something that is through all, like I mentioned, European Green Deal. So if you read the Green Charter here, as I mentioned, they talk about how you should minimize the environmental footprint of the activities, try to describe this, You are encouraged to address the principles. What you are offered now in this call, this year's call, you are offered to describe this in part B2. We're going to talk about it the 31st. So the form depends. You have like an A part and a B1 and B2 part in the forms. In the part B2 is where you have an option, but not an obligation to describe this. So to outline how you intend to adhere to the MSCA Green Charter. But it's important to understand that it's not going to be an evaluation criteria by the experts this year. But we don't know the following years that they might make it an evaluation criteria. So it's good to practice on this if you plan to go maybe next year for this one. So now we're going to go more into the details of the postdoctoral fellowship here itself. So before I do that, I just want to give you, I'm going to use all these like abbreviation here to see. So when it comes to participation in MSCA, you can categorize it. So we're talking about member states. That will be the full members of the European community. MS, we call them MS, not a disease, is a member state, just kidding. Horizon Europe associated countries are countries that are maybe geographically not like connected to the European Union, etc., but they have paid a fee to be part of the framework program. So they are eligible as beneficiaries, Horizon Europe associated countries. I will call them HEAC. In the framework program, in a work program, they're also called HEAC, if I recall right. But then we have the rest of the countries in the world that are not Horizon Europe associated countries, HEAC or member states. They are called third countries. So this is where Australia and New Zealand falls under, so third country. So depending on where you are, how your category is, you can participate differently into the course. And also there are some entities, when they talk a lot about entities here. So they talk about for being a beneficiary, legal entities and non-legal entities, etc., etc. So in my presentation now, I have put in like academic, you will see that symbol there. Non-academic will be like everything else. For instance, a non-governmental organization, authority, and an association. It can be like anything, basically, everything that's not academic. But then you also have industry, small and medium-sized enterprises. I put in a symbol of a factory, but you probably get the picture here. So we talk about something that's commercial here. So this is the abbreviation that I will use further on the presentation. So if we look at the European fellowships, like these fellowships are mono-beneficiary. So just beneficiary, so member state or Horizon Europe associated country can be a beneficiary here. So it's open, the European one, as I mentioned before, is open for fellows from member states, from Horizon Europe associated countries, or from third countries, including Australia and New Zealand. So it comes like with a fellow that have an idea, a good experience and a good training, and would like to actually move to Europe to do for 12 to 24 months research project together with a host and a supervisor. So your research idea depends on going to that specific place in Europe or in a Horizon Europe associated country, because that is where you have the best expertise in order for your proposal to be the best conducted research. So you come from Europe, any country in the world, or move within Europe. So it can also be like that you move from one member state or one Horizon Europe associated country to another, etc. But there is mobility requirement here. You may, if you want, it's optional to include a secondment up to 1/3 of the standard duration here. So the secondment can be in a member state country, in Horizon Europe associated country, or in a third country, including Australia and New Zealand. You may also, it's optional, you don't have to, but it's optional, add an additional 6 months non-academic placement. So that is something that can only take place in outside academia, so in a company or in a non-governmental organization, etc., etc. That can only take place in a member state or in Horizon Europe associated country. So for you would mean that you have to stay an additional 6 months in Europe or Horizon Europe associated country. The other option is the Global Fellowship. It's also a mono-beneficiary program. So that is open for nationals or long-term residents in a member state or Horizon Europe associated country with a researcher that would like to go out from Europe to a third country to do a 12 to 24 month postdoctoral fellowship under a global postdoctoral fellowship. And that you can only do, the outgoing phase can only take place in a third country, for instance, Australia and New Zealand. So for those of you that are representatives from our organization here, you could actually receive or actually apply together with a beneficiary in Europe, in a member state or Horizon Europe associated country. You can apply with them as an associated partner to have a global postdoctoral fellow to come to you for 12 to 24 months to do research. However, there is a mandatory return phase of 12 months. This is like not open for negotiation. You have to come back for 12 months to the member state or Horizon Europe associated country here. You may, it's optional, add a non-academic placement here too, but it can only take place in your return phase when you come back to Europe. You may also, while you are on your outgoing phase, include, it's also optional, up to 1/3 of the standard duration as a comment in a member state, in Horizon Europe associated country, or in a third country, including Australia and New Zealand. So this is something that described in your proposal. It has to add value. All these like non-academic placements as a comment must add value to the proposal, to your training, to the whole, proposal. Eligibility rules are extremely important at this point. Before you even read, I would say, all these documents, you should check like whether you are eligible or not here. So for postdoctoral fellowship, you must be in possession of a PhD at the call deadline. That means you must successfully defend it. You don't need to have formally awarded it, but you must have defended it at the call deadline. At the day when the call closed, you must have defended it. But there is a little but here. It cannot have been conditionally awarded. Some organizations, when they award, they might say, "Oh, you have passed your exam, but there is a conditional. You have to do," and then there might be some writing there. So make sure, in the case where the fellow that you want to recruit, for instance, or if you are a fellow, that you sort of like can explain to the research officer this, should you be awarded and go into grant agreement. This is really important. There is also an up to 8 years research experience of the PhD, the 8-year rules. And if you go into the call, you will see that there are links. There is a self-assessment tool for the 8-year rules, because of course you can deduct time. There are rules for deducting this time. I'm not going to go into it now, but there are rules to deduct. And you should get in contact with the grants office and fill this one in and make sure that you fill it in properly and have a good discussion. You can also contact the NCPs in the countries that you would like to go to. There's another rule also, the mobility rule. You cannot have resided or had your main activity in the country of the beneficiary for a European fellowship. That means like a member state or Horizon Europe associated country here. Or if it's a global fellowship, the host organization for more than 12 months in the 36 months before the deadline. That is something that that's an eligibility criteria, and you have to prove it, so to say. So these are the 3 eligibility rules that are first thing to check, basically, if you're thinking to go for this. When it comes to MSCA, also, which is good, you can be awarded a Seal of Excellence certificate. That is, if you had a score of equal or above 85%, but you did not get funding due to the budget limitations. Some years are highly competitive, so you might not get funded, although your proposal has been, evaluated to be like extremely good. But then you will get the Seal of Excellence certificate. You may also end up in the reserve lists. That means that you could be funded if somehow the budget of the European Commission change. They might add extra budget or etc. So there's a grant agreement period here. So you may get a certificate, SOE certificate, or end up on the reserve list. So many of the national member states, sometimes I think also some of the Horizon Europe associated countries, provide national funding for MSCAs that have a SOE certificate. So depending on, normally it's like if you applied with them, if you apply with an organization in their country, normally it's like that it's open for you to apply for national funding. So that is something that you can have a look at if you end up in this situation. I would also like to stress something really good. The NCPs, the European NCPs here, we have a project. There's a project that is actually funded partly by the EU here. So MSC Net, it's called. And they develop, these are national contact points. They have developed this web page here, as you see, with a lot of information. If you click on the scientific community part up here, you will see to the left here in the window, you have a lot of information about all calls. And especially they have MSCA Net Postdoctoral Fellowship Handbook. So that one is really good. That the guide for applicants is good. This one will give you even more hands-on information. It really goes into the nitty-gritty details here. And it's updated accordingly to when something needs to be updated. So I would recommend you also to have a look at this page and download the handbook. It's at your disposal when you go into the grant agreement. Sorry, when you start working on your proposal, if you ticked all the eligibility criteria, etc. When it comes to the evaluation, then, when you have submitted your proposal, it is a one-step evaluation. It's fully remote by at least a minimum of 3 evaluators, sometimes more. It's a 5-grade scale that they focus, 1 to 5, they grade. They focus on strengths and shortcomings. And the evaluation letter will be sent to you approximately 5 months of the deadline. So it takes around 5 months for them to do all the check, all the evaluation, and all the ranking lists, etc. And then it will be sent to you. If you click on the link down there, you can get access to this information sheet about how your proposal will be evaluated. It's handled by the European Research Executive Agency, which is an administrative agency that the European Commission uses for this kind of handling. So when these 3 evaluators have done their individual evaluation, they summon together, also digitally, and they discuss and agree on a common position for the comments and scores for each proposals that they have read. So it's more like a consensus phase here. And then the project, and there is like supervision of vice chairs and chairs that monitor the whole process. And then, at the end, the finalization, the commission and the agency reviews the expert, and they put together the final ranking list here. So when it comes to evaluation here for MSCA, it really is like the most common mistakes. I used to evaluate for in the previous framework program. It was called individual fellowship at the time. Now it's called postdoctoral fellowship. It's not much have changed. It's similar. It's really something that is more than just a postdoctoral fellowship application. Again, normal. Oh, I want to do this research. Yes, I'm very good at it. Yeah, like the normal is like. This is also a strong focus on impact and the quality and efficiency of the implementation. Like I said, all the supervisor and the hosting institution is also evaluated together with the proposal. Why are the postdoctoral fellowship going to this host institution with this supervisor? Like it all has to make sense here. And then, so there's like no room for some missing something out. You cannot miss anything here. Like all criteria matter. So I put in this one. These are the main criteria here. In the work program, you will have the full criteria as described, like in more details than here in the picture I show here. So when you go into the work program in one of the chapters there, you will have the full criteria described there. So, but excellence is weighed 50%. So it's the quality of the project's research, innovation, etc., and the soundness of the proposed methodology. And then the quality of the supervision, training, and the two-way transfer of knowledge is also part of the excellence, weighted 50% here. And quality and appropriateness of the research and professional experience, that will be your CV. So not only how many publications you have, more like how you have basically run your career. Like I said, these are experienced researchers that go for this call. But also impact. Don't forget the impact here, like enhance the career perspectives of and employability here, and expected outcomes and impact, expected scientific and societal economic impacts. That is why we urge you to read all these other underlying principles that I mentioned there. But then it's also the quality and effectiveness of the work plan. to have a good Gantt scheme that makes sense. It should be everything that they read in your proposals, they should find it should make sense in the Gantt scheme. And also the quality and capacity of the host institution and participating organizations. This is where it comes in, like the comments, placement has to add value. So you cannot leave any of these details out. So you need to really work through your proposal several times. It takes up to a year to finalize, depending on where you are at the stage. Maybe you already have a good proposal prepared, but if you're completely brand new to this, you have a lot of work in front of you, but it is not impossible, of course, but you need to fit into this. An early contact with grants office at the beneficiary where you want to apply with. I'm going to mention a little bit what can you get in terms of funding here. So when it comes to the funding, it's like a postdoctoral fellowship. It's a contribution that goes to the recruited researcher here. It's per person month here. So you get the living allowance, you get the mobility allowance that goes to the researcher. If you're applicable for it, family allowance, that means if you have a partner equivalent to marriage or similar. But it's the national law that applies also. So some European countries, they don't consider, in Sweden, if you live with someone but you're not married, like you live with a partner in a partnership, but you're not married, that is considered by law as a marriage. So in Sweden, you are applicable for that even if you're not married. In other countries, you might not. So that's why also contact the grants office in the country where you want to actually apply with, to make sure if you can or not or cannot apply for family allowance here. There's something called long-term leave allowance. If you need to be on maternal, paternal leave or sick, long-term sick leave, for instance, that can happen, like we're all humans. So there is this extra additional funding that you can get from as contribution that you can get here. There's also the special needs allowance if it's applicable, if you need special needs, extra funding for special needs during that regards, maybe if you need some additional help tool in order to perform your research, for instance. So there's also something called institutional unit contribution that goes to the recruiting organization, the host, that goes to research training and networking, for instance. Could be visa costs. Normally visa cost ends up here. There's also management and indirect contributions. But on all these numbers here, there is a country coefficiency code that applies to this. So depending on which country you go to. So that's why also contact with the grants office and make sure that it's clear how much pocket money you actually will get, because they're on the living allowance and mobility allowance, the difference in different nations, of course, but there will be like tax enforcements, there will be other costs that they might have. So these numbers not the one that you're going to get in your wallet. So make sure with the grants office that it's clear to you how much salary you will actually get in your pocket. That would be my recommendation for this. Early contact with grants office. That would be your way in here. I added some useful links here. Most of them you find in the other slides, but there are some additional one here. We talk about this associated Horizon Europe associated countries. That is a list of the associated Horizon Europe associated countries. So that one is also updated because there are negotiations going on in parallel all the time. So sometimes we get a notification of, oh, now this country has been associated, so now they can participate in this way, or etc., etc. So have a look at those links. I put in actually the UK and Switzerland. They are third countries, but Switzerland is considered to be a third country. UK, probably heard about Brexit, that there are some ongoing. Right now, UK can participate as an associated country in the application phase. We don't know at the grant agreement phase because there's an ongoing negotiation. So have a look at that one, like via your grants office. I would recommend also to keep them on board. Yep, and I think that was my last slide. Yep. Thank you. Question?
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much, Isabel. I think it was one of the most excellent overview that we have heard on postdoctoral fellowship. So really thankful. I can see there are still a lot of questions that are unanswered. So if you have pending questions that were not answered, and if you feel that these are really urgent questions, please email us to us so that we can respond to them. But please be aware that we will be organizing a follow-up webinar on application advice, and it's very possible that your questions will be addressed already in that webinar. And the application advice webinar will be on 31st May, and there will be a matchmaking masterclass on 5th and 6th of June. As you have already expressed interest, a lot of you want to be involved in this. You will receive more information on the upcoming webinars through the email address that you have registered. So please be rest assured that you will be communicated with time to join these webinars as well. I think with that, please join me in thanking Isabel for her time. I'm sure the audience got a lot of useful insights on the overview of the program itself and what information needs to be catered in terms of preparing a holistic proposal. I think with that, please allow me to also reiterate to keep an eye on our social media platforms to get notified of these webinars on a timely basis, and also in general of any news related to the European research landscape. As I mentioned earlier, please follow us on our social media of your choice by typing EURAXESS Australia and New Zealand. One quick request: when you exit the webinar, there are 2 survey questions that will appear. Please respond to that. It's a very straightforward answer, and we will be able to take that into account when we do organize future webinars. I think this brings us to the end of today's session, and signing off and wishing you a good week ahead. Thank you very much from my end, and also thank you very much, Isabel, for joining in.
Thank you.